Herb. Herb is a plant. I mean, herbs are good for everything. Herb.
Welcome to Eugene Cannabis TV. You made the trip. We got our friend Chelsea with us tonight, and you got DanK here, and we're talking about things that have happened and things that are going to happen, I guess. So, two big things we want to talk about is, in particular, was the Hempfest. The Hempfest is behind us now. Hempfest 2013, Emerald Empire Hempfest 2013 is over, and now it's all history.
It is. Working on 2014 already.
That's right, exactly. And Chelsea's group, the Greener Side, had a booth out there.
We did.
And that was, yeah, it was really nice. And right among all our friends, we had the Mercy Center, Oregon Green Free. And
all sorts of informational booths, a lot of really cool craft booths. There was one lady that specifically did a bunch of tie-dye, and she had an amazing story about how she came to cannabis. There were all sorts of different people out there with pipes, stuff for kids. There was a hula hooper. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we even had a face painter out there, and
That's right.
we made a special deal to get a face painter there to work, help to decorate our ganja girls. So that was really neat because it added more ambience to the group, to the whole thing by having a face painter. So it was incredible. Saturday and Sunday was a really good turnout. Sunday was a little slower. Some of the vendors had to leave, get home because they travel long distances and things. But so it's kind of slowed down on Sunday. But it was a mellow day, and we've kind of developed things like music and all that for that to fit in there.
Awesome.
Being mellow. So yeah, it was really great. We came out in the black, not big black, but we definitely came out in the black. So
that's always
a good thing. Yeah. So we don't. We didn't finish the Hempfest owing people as we have in the past. So
awesome.
Yeah, that was great. And a big part of that, thanks to the Greener Side, came on as a sponsor this year. As a sponsor this year for the first time.
Well, thank you for having us. We had a great time.
Definitely. Oh yes. And also our Hempfest meetings. Next one coming up is August 17th at 2 o'clock, and it will be at the Greener Side in the classroom, which is 1601C. 1601C, of course, that stands for cannabis.
Yep.
Yeah. And anyway, Oak Street. So 1601C Oak Street, and then the Emerald Empire. The Wild Valley Normal meeting is on the 24th. It's another Saturday, also 2 o'clock. So we appreciate the use of that great meeting facility.
Well, we appreciate you guys coming down there. And this week at our meeting, we talked about a letter to the editor that somebody submitted to the Medford Tribune that was an anti-House Bill 3460 editorial. So if you get a chance, you want to read that. It has different reasons why they believe it is a bad law. And letters back to the editor are a great way for us to voice our opinions, tell people why this is an important bill, and argue some of the arguments that they made.
That's right. Yeah, it's HB 3460, which is the dispensary bill.
Right, and
dispensaries.
They're not going to be called dispensaries. They're going to be called medical marijuana facilities. So that will be the official term given to organizations. That's what the placard's going to say. So I just found that out today.
It's going to be interesting to see. Yes, in fact, speaking of that, we jump into the really big segment we want to talk about is Chelsea was at the recent ACMM meeting, that's the advisory board to the Oregon Medical Marijuana Program. It's an interesting board. They do a lot of great work. Some of it's very frustrating because they can't get what they want.
Right.
But anyway, tell us about the meeting, because this is a special meeting with a special guest.
Yes, there was a well-rounded group of people there, and I think the outcome is going to be a very cohesive law for us to follow. One of the first issues that they came across was the definition of an immature plant. So as it stands, it's anything that is 12 inches in height or in width. And so they are proposing a change to make it anything that is less than 24 inches in height or width, and that is not flowering, will be considered a seedling or an immature plant. And they did that because if you have a seedling, it takes a while for you to be able to sex it and figure out if you are going to put it into flower or use it to make seeds. I guess when they created the law, it was more something that law enforcement wanted to use. So hopefully they'll be able to change that. The next thing that we went over was applications, which a lot of people are very interested to find out how the application process is going to go.
To be a licensed dispensary.
To be a licensed dispensary. So there's going to be 2 different criterias that they're going to use, and that will be the first people to apply, and then the second will be the organization that was the first to apply for a Secretary of State business identification number. So for instance, if 2 places wanted to open right next to each other within 1,000 feet, which you cannot operate within 1,000 feet of a school or within 1,000 feet of another organization, those are kind of the guidelines that they're going to go by. And they also talked about giving existing organizations 30 days to file beforehand, so that they can get their applications in first.
Back to the mature and immature plants for a moment. I always thought that what the standard ought to be is that it's an immature plant until it starts flowering, then it's a mature plant. It seems that,
right.
Of course, that would only work for females. So I guess if you also have to have it work for a male plant, maybe that wouldn't be such a good definition. But I don't know. It just seems basic to me, because
it is.
People get in big trouble because it doesn't take long for a plant to get over 12 inches, and then bam, you're in violation. Overnight,
you can go from in compliance to out of compliance.
Yeah.
So it will be really nice to get that changed. Once again, it's dealing with law enforcement and how they interpret things versus how we interpret things, and it's nice to get our voice through there because we deal with these things. We understand that issue that some law enforcement aren't familiar with.
Yeah, definitely. And so anyway, what else? And then you had a special guest at the meeting.
There was the director of the Oregon Health Authority. He's the interim director until they hire a permanent director for the position. But he was there helping them through the process, and he seemed to be doing a great job. He's very hands-off, lets everybody speak their mind, but is a common sense kind of guy. And so I think that he'll be really good for the outcome of this law.
Well, maybe they'll end up hiring him.
He doesn't want to do it.
Oh, of course. Okay.
He's the director of another branch, and so he's got a lot on his plate. I don't think he wants to take on this one. It's a tough job.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he was there to kind of go through some of the requirements that medical marijuana facilities will need to comply with. And so what they came up with was the no school zone. So you can't be within 1,000 feet of a elementary school, a high school, or a secondary school that is primarily used by minors. Every medical marijuana facility will need to have a security system, panic buttons. A really big one is that they will all need to test their medicine for pesticides, mold, and mildew, and have a process for returning medicine that has a positive result back to the grower. And we need to come up with a law that will, or some regulation that will prevent growers from getting through the cracks. If they test positive at one location, they can go to another location and try them. If they test positive there, go to another location until they find somewhere where they can get it in to that place and get tainted medicine into the hands of patients. So those are some of the issues that we're working out further down the line to try to prevent things such as that from happening.
Great. So we've got to wrap up. We're coming to the end of the segment, and you are, was it nominated, or was it again? You're going to be on the ACMM?
Yeah, I got nominated to serve on the Rules Advisory Committee.
There you go. That's it. So that's a great start. Get your foot in the door, and that's great.
Thank you.
Deal, yeah. So we appreciate the report, and we'll be hearing back more from Chelsea on the ACMM and things of that nature, and talk more about the greener side. Still helping patients. Greener side.
Hey everybody. So I'm really honored to be invited to speak in Eugene. The last time that I was here, things went a little haywire and I wound up on the side of the road with a Coburg cop tossing my stuff. So thankfully to Brian Michaels back there, I got a little help and got out of it, but I'm really excited to make some new memories here today with all of you. That don't involve the police. So if you're like me, this probably is not your first rally or march. So I wanted to tell you what makes this one a little bit different than the rest. First, of course, I heard that y'all have plans to legalize cannabis in Oregon. What do you think about that? I can't think of a better way to kick off the campaign than with simultaneous marches in 4 different cities throughout Oregon, joining forces with people around the globe to send a message that prohibition needs to end. So there's some other important reasons too why we're here today and marching. We're marching for all of those who can't be with us today to march because their lives have been ruined by prohibition. People like Peter McWilliams and Richard Floor. A lot of you might know about Peter McWilliams because of the great work that Julia does on Peter's page. So I'm going to take some time to tell you about Richard Floor. Richard Floor was the first caregiver for medical marijuana in the state of Montana, the first one to register and put his name on the books, put his name on the line. Together with 3 others, he formed Montana Cannabis, which was a caregiving cooperative that was designed to serve the most vulnerable patients in the state, the sickest of the sick. And like a lot of cannabis caregivers, Richard Floor was ill. He had a laundry list of ailments. And like a lot of caregivers, he was prosecuted by the federal government, which refuses to recognize, first off, that cannabis has a legitimate medical use. I'm sure a lot of you know that. I don't have to tell you about that. But the other thing that the federal government refuses to recognize is that the U.S. Constitution guarantees individual states the right to experiment with policies on a state level, like drug reform. So Richard Floor was 68 years old when a judge handed down a 5-year prison sentence. Had he survived, he would have been 80 by the time he earned his freedom back. But he didn't survive. His family pleaded with the judge, saying Richard wouldn't last a year. And the judge responded with promises that Richard would be placed in a prison with proper medical facilities. And they sent Richard away in handcuffs that day. They refused to let his family say goodbye to him. They didn't even get to hug him one last time. And 4 months later, Richard died in a federal prison with 8 broken bones, shackled to a hospital bed after suffering 2 massive heart attacks. Now, the remarkable thing about this was that the autopsy said it wasn't the heart attacks that killed Richard. It was colon cancer that went undiagnosed, even though he screamed out for help because of the pain. The government didn't just take Richard's life. They took the home that had been in his family for generations, and they took his wife, Sherry, and his son, Justin, and they put them in federal prison too. This is what's left of Richard Floor, his ashes. This is what the federal government does to human beings. Richard's widow, Sherry, is in a federal prison camp in Phoenix, unable to bury her husband. The last 4 months of her husband's life, she was unable to communicate with her husband of 37 years because the wardens wouldn't approve contact. Her husband died without them ever saying goodbye. Now, for those of you that think this is an isolated incident and that this is only the rare occurrence, I'm here to tell you there's a lot more than Richard Floor. The Duvals in Michigan have been ripped to shreds. Jeremy is 30 years old and serving a 5-year prison sentence. And his dad is being sent to prison, and just like Richard, he's really sick. He's going to serve a 10-year prison sentence, and I don't think he'll survive. And right here in Oregon, 100 miles that way, sits a federal correctional facility that you wouldn't even notice if you didn't know it was there. It's right smack dab in the middle of wine country. And there, in a minimum security camp, sits Chris Williams, Jason Nelson, and about a dozen other medical marijuana prisoners. Chris Williams was Richard's business partner. His partner died less than a month before he went on trial. And with his partner's death weighing heavy in his heart, he took his case to trial and refused to plead guilty. Few could really predict how truly stacked the deck is against these people in federal court. But like others who went before him, the Duvals in Michigan, Aaron Sandusky, and Charlie Lynch in California, Chris was convicted, and a jury found him guilty of all 8 charges related to drug trafficking. As a result, like Jim said, he faced a mandatory minimum sentence of over 90 years in prison. That's a mandatory minimum, at least 90 years, for medical marijuana that was legal in his state. Right now in Sheridan, Oregon, like I said, 100 miles away, you wouldn't know it's there if I didn't tell you, Chris and hundreds of other non-violent prisoners are serving years of their lives, if not decades, for crimes that have no real victim. Even the Bureau of Prisons admits that these people pose such minimal threat to the community that they don't even have a chain link fence surrounding them, not even barbed wire. But we insist on spending almost $30,000 a year per prisoner to lock them up and segregate them from society and their families. What could we spend that money on? Let's just say there's 100 nonviolent prisoners in Sheridan, and they cost $30,000 a year to incarcerate. That's $3 million per year just for those 100 prisoners in Sheridan. And there's dozens of prison camps all around the country. I don't know about you, but I'd rather spend that money legalizing cannabis in Oregon. So this is why we're here today. We're here for Richard and Sherry Floor. We're here for Jeremy and Jerry Duval, for Chris Williams and Jason Nelson, and the countless other victims who've had their lives ruined by prohibition. Thank you so much.
Welcome back to Eugene Cannabis TV show. We had to take a break there, and we had to change some of our commentators. We have our friend Eric. Eric was with the group
Medicinalhorizons.com.
That's it. Thank you. My mind went blank for a second, so thank you. Yes, no if you need some help with any question about medical marijuana, how to grow it, how to give a shout to Eric. Eric will definitely help you. He's not out to make a buck. He's out to help people, and that's very commendable. We got a couple of stories to talk about here, and the one that this has struck me so hard that I decided to make actually a special release out of it that I want to hand out with the Willamette Valley Normal staying at the bottom, because I want people to be able to get mad and be able to get a hold of somebody to maybe try to do something. But Oregon Court expands warrantless vehicle searches. The Oregon Court of Appeals has broadened the reach of warrantless vehicle searches in a ruling this week. The decision adds to a controversial area of state law that has expanded police powers considerably since it was first taken up in the 1980s. Oregon law permits police, given probable cause, to search operable vehicles without a warrant. The court ruled this week that everything connected to a car, including a trailer, is available to a warrantless search. Advocates say warrantless vehicle searches are necessary tools for police who need authority to quickly search a car given probable cause. Critics respond that the courts give police too much latitude. They say decisions that broaden the automobile exception to warrants only make it more likely that police will abuse their power. And the thing I'm struck about this is here we are going another step towards the police state, and it happens a little bit at a time. And if you're not, as the old bumper sticker says, if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention.
Expanding warrantless vehicle searches. What's next? Are they going to start having warrantless house searches? I mean, one of the things that you mentioned, and it says in the text here, is given probable cause, and they mentioned that phrase a couple times. The problem with probable cause is in the eye of the law enforcement officer. That's not something that has to physically be proved later on. He can say, you made an illegal lane change, you didn't use your blinker. That's his word over yours. And the probable cause is, well, I had to pull him over because I saw him commit an infraction. And then in the process of me pulling him over to write this citation, I searched his car without a warrant because he's allowed to. That it's funny that when I read that, because a lot of times if you ever read the police blogs, there's a newspaper, Oregon Cannabis Connection newspaper here in Oregon, and they always have this police log along I-5. Mm-hmm. And every one of these searches, I would say nearly every one of them, if not all of them, it always states a person was pulled over for a traffic violation. Never ever says specifically what violation. But the point is they don't need, what this gives is they don't need a reason. I mean, and given probable cause is sort of like their little safe word to say, well, we can only do it if we have probable cause, but the proof of probable cause is within them. And so now they could pull you over for any reason and claim it was under some probable cause, but then once they got you pulled over, they don't even need to ask your permission to go into your car. And now trailers, anything else that's connected to the car is considered the car. And yeah, like you said, if you're not paying attention, if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention, because this is slowly but surely, and I always like how these are done with our best interests in mind. This is for our safety only. They don't want to do it, but it's for our safety, and it's just a joke,
Yeah, it's terrible. Our last district attorney made a ruling. There was a case where an 18-year-old had stolen a pickup and was chasing. The cops were chasing him, and he got hung up on the railroad tracks down at 42nd and Weyerhaeuser there. And the officer, the guy was coming out of the pickup, and the officer said that he believed he saw the guy with a weapon, and so he shot and killed him. And Harkle Road at the time, as a DA, said that it was a justified shooting because the officer thought that he had a gun.
Yeah.
And that was the deal after that, and that was the new standard, was that an officer believes that you have a gun, he can shoot you and kill you and get away with it. Now, if that isn't a big step to the police state, I don't know what is.
I was always curious as to when law enforcement went from protecting our community to basically being hall monitors. And it's when you look at the news and all the people that are getting released, and we've discussed this in past shows, here in Linn County, they've cut funding at times for child pornography investigations, all the while they're raiding medical marijuana facilities. It makes you wonder, like, what's the purpose of police in today's society? It's not to protect us. I mean, that's a given. I mean, but what are they doing, and how are they serving us? It almost begs the question, why are they using tax dollars when they're not even serving the taxpayers? It's just incredible that they are saying to protect us better, they need to expand and trample on our rights more, while at the same time justifying releasing prisoners from the county jail, while at the same time these things are going on. Like you said, it's more and more inching towards a police state. If we're not already there, some people think we're already sitting in the middle of it. We're just not aware.
And actually, this second segment is kind of the outrage segment, I guess, because the next story will get you even better. A marijuana ad pulled from the Jumbotron at NASCAR Brickyard 500. This is a story that came out about how they were going to run an ad that talks about marijuana is less dangerous than alcohol. And it was going to run on this deal. Well, it got pulled. The Drug Free America Foundation complained that the ad promoted drug abuse. Though 19 states and the District of Columbia have legalized the medical use of marijuana, Indiana has not. The campaign falsely claims marijuana is safer than alcohol and promotes illicit drug use in a state where marijuana is illegal, said Calvin Fay, Executive Director of Drug Free America Foundation and Save Our Society from Drugs. It is irresponsible marketing, and I commend Grazing Media for their swift action towards the removal of this ad. And so it's disgusting, really.
You know, this company knew what the ad was going to say.
Yep.
They looked at the content and they accepted it. Then they took the money from the Marijuana Policy Project, who was sponsoring the ad. And then when they got complaints, like you said, from this Drug Free America Foundation, and I think this one's hilarious, Save Our Society from Drugs. And so they said that the campaign falsely claims, like Dan just said, that marijuana is safer than alcohol. So what these people are claiming, Save Our Society from Drugs is claiming that alcohol is in fact safer than marijuana. You know, you can start any organization and you can call it whatever you want. You know, you can call it let's help protect our families, and you could be making pesticides. I mean, it just doesn't, you could just come up with any funny name. And Save Our Society from Drugs, making a claim that marijuana is more dangerous than alcohol, makes me wonder if this is just a paid-for company from the alcohol industry.
Yeah.
And I wonder how much Save Our Society from Drugs is concerned about the pharmaceutical problem in this country, because I can assure you that's even more dangerous than alcohol. But yeah, so they were going to run this at the Jumbotron outside the Brickyard 400 in Indiana. It was going to run, and it was going to show, you know, the benefits of marijuana as a recreational drug. You know, there's a lot of pull for the medical part of marijuana, and it's absolutely necessary. But when you're comparing recreational drugs, marijuana trumps alcohol by a landslide. And that's the only thing that this, you know, company was pointing out.
Yeah, Mason Truvert, Director of Communications for the Marijuana Policy Project, said, "This is the exact type of hypocrisy that motivated us to run this ad. We wanted to make people think about the absurdity of laws that allow adults to use alcohol but punish them for making the safer choice to use marijuana instead, if that is what they prefer."
I'm surprised that they don't make it illegal to not drink. It's getting so bad, you know. It's like, if you want to choose to do marijuana over alcohol, you don't have that right. It's like incredible.
Oregon Country Fair became drug-free here about 10, 12 years ago. They're drug-free. Well, now they're drug-free, my friends in security are telling me that they're having more, now they're having problems with alcohol. Major problems, assaults, rape.
Everywhere alcohol goes, you'll find problems.
Yeah. So, we'll see you next week. And Eugene Cannabis TV, we'll see you then.